Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another awesome weekly market analysis with me, Tremaine, guys. And for today's weekly market analysis, we're going to be going through 5 different pairs: the DXY, Aussie CAD, Aussie dollar, Swiss yen, and New Zealand dollar JPY. Now, it's going to be awesome to go through these pairs because there's a lot we have to say about them and there's some concepts that we need to go through. So let's not waste any time, guys. Let's get straight into the DXY. So guys, on the DXY, we're looking at the DXY from a daily. So squinching our chart so that we can't see the individual candlesticks is just as good as us looking at that weekly structure. So let's go ahead and see what we can see here. So looking at the major structure, once again, extreme highs, extreme lows, looking and paying attention to how price is making its way towards these extreme resistance areas where we've seen sellers coming into the market, being able to violate some levels of structure. So paying attention, guys, just to the most recent price action, we can see this expanding structure. Now, what we need to speak about this expanding structure, last week when we looked at this pair, guys, we were at the support of this expanding structure. We expected some bullish price action and maybe even a violation of this resistance trend line over here to begin to start looking for those bullish biased setups. But let's look at the price action here on the daily, guys. So if we just zoom in just a little bit more and we just pay attention to the levels of structure within this expanding structure, what we will see is that this market, guys, has a potential to react at a very important resistance area. So we've seen this corrective structure starting over here, finding some resistance at this area here, market pushing down, finding some support. We see market coming and giving us a pair of equal highs. We then see the market violate these equal highs, break back below our structure, and then what are we doing, guys? We are retesting this area of resistance one more time before markets find some resistance and push away. So guys, you can see that we've tested this area a couple of times, and so now this area has also become an area of value for me. Why is this an area of value? Because if we look at the extreme structure, we've identified some higher time frame resistance areas up there. So we know that we're running into some weekly and also some potential daily resistance areas. So we're expecting some higher time frame sellers to jump into this market. And as well as if we take a look at what structure we're in an expanding structure towards or close to our resistance areas. So what I'm going to be doing over the course of next week is I'm going to be highlighting and placing a big importance on those resistance areas, looking for a bearish reaction from price. Now let's go into what we have in our most recent price action, guys. So in our most recent price action, what we will see is prices giving us a nice push to the upside, violating some resistance areas, giving us a new higher high, coming down, giving us a nice new low or higher low, and then obviously a small push to the upside. Now we're still going to be bullish bias on the dollar index as long as we are above this resistance trend line that we've broken above. So as long as price action is above there, we can still be bullish, guys. But like I told you guys, we are waiting for some sort of a bearish reaction from the dollar index. So we'll be paying attention to how do prices get into this area. Do we find some continuation for prices to make its way into this area? Once prices actually do get into this area, guys, we need to be paying attention to, is prices or are prices reacting to this area? Are we getting some sort of a reversal structure? If we do get a reversal structure, guys, somewhere in and around this area here, this is the area where we will be looking for either that risk entry, depending on how prices get there. If prices create a nice ascending structure for us to be able to isolate to look for that risk entry, then all and well, we will be looking for that resistance and risk entry. If prices do not give us that corrective price action, but we then see a nice break of structure in the direction from this sell sensitive area over here, we will be looking for that reduced risk entry, expecting prices to make a bigger corrective structure, at least to retest our previous resistance areas first. So we're talking about these resistance areas over here, so our extreme highs that prices broke above nice and impulsively. So we're obviously expecting price to at least terminate within this area, which will also be in and around the 90% rule of this expanding structure, so where the expanding structure started. So we understand that this is a nice value area for us to be looking for nice terminations. So if we do manage to find some dollar weakness over the course of next week, guys, this should be our target area. This should be the first area where we're expecting some new bullish momentum from the dollar index. So guys, over the course of next week, we are still bullish as long as we're above this resistance trend line. But once prices get close to this resistance area over here, where we've basically seen a reaction multiple times and prices manipulating above this important zone and then respecting the zone, we expect that if prices get here, especially correctively, prices might respect this area one more time. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at for the dollar index over the course of next week. Let's get into one of our currency pairs, and we're gonna be starting, guys, with some Aussie CAD. Now for Aussie CAD, guys, let's start off on the daily just so that we can reference this nice beautiful daily structure. And getting into things, guys, you guys can see that we're in some sort of a descending structure. Now this pair is probably not going to be one of the most interesting pairs for us to watch next week, but I had to include this pair because there's going to be so much to learn about the nature of this structure on this pair, depending on what goes what then happens and how this pair develops in the future. So on the daily, guys, we're in this descending structure. We see a nice impulsive break of price action. If we just focus on the most recent price action, what we can see just looking at important high and low structures, also taking into account what our previous understandings and biases were of this market, we see prices coming in from the left over here, establishing some support, establishing some resistance, and then creating a whole lot of structure. So we understand that this is a previous range that prices were in. We've broken below that range, and then we've recently broken back into this range. So what are we expecting once we see prices manipulate a range by breaking below this range? We're expecting prices to come back and tap the support of this range, showing us respect for this area, and then that move to the upside. So that's what I'm saying, guys. Price action is going to be so interesting on Aussie CAD in terms of us learning from the market price action, but as well as us learning, we're also going to be identifying those important key areas so that we can also be able to find entries of price. So guys, looking at price action on the daily, you guys can see we're slap bang directly in the center of important resistance areas up here, and obviously our important support areas where we're expecting market to retest, which is also, if we look at just the price action, previous resistance areas where we've seen prices get a push down, we've come back, respected this area, pushed away, and then violated to the upside. So we're expecting market to still come back and retest, but we'll see that structure a lot more clearly when we drop down onto the H4. Now that we're dropping down onto the H4, guys, what we will be able to also isolate is some sort of a corrective structure. What are we correcting around? We have these previous resistance areas over here where we see prices breaking above and below, giving us indication of corrective price action in this area over here. Now we know that this corrective structure can only be one of two corrective structures. It will either be a reversal corrective structure or a continuation corrective structure to tap into this resistance area over here. So what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be approaching Aussie CAD over the course of next week, guys, let's just delete this. So we've highlighted this area over here as an important resistance area that has been broken above by price. We see prices establishing resistance, coming down, giving us multiple touches, pushing away, coming back at a later stage, giving us another reaction, and then breaking above. So whatever structure gets created within this area over here, we'll only be looking for two possible scenarios. One, we either want to be able to sell as high as we can by waiting for prices to complete our beautiful structure that we have developing over here, this expanding sort of a structure. We want to see prices coming up to give us that beautiful third touch at our resistance area, closer to our higher time frame resistance, where we look for prices to break back below structure and obviously retest for that move to the downside. Now this is the only selling opportunity that we will find here on our Aussie CAD. Other than that, guys, we're gonna look for that bullish bias opportunity, an opportunity to trade in the direction of this new bullish momentum that we've seen violating our important resistance areas. And the only way we'll be able to do that is if we see prices giving us this move to the downside and obviously giving us that reversal structure at our important key levels of support. So if prices obviously correct down to the support structure over here, then we will get warrant for looking for that risk entry. But if prices are impulsive towards our support structure, then we need to wait and see prices breaking structure in our direction, which after we then look for prices to create that higher low, because we're expecting that maybe because we've violated those resistance areas, price has now begun to trend in the opposite direction. So once we see this break of resistance of our important key support areas over there, we will then be looking for prices to just give us that higher low structure for us to be able to enter into this nice bullish biased trade. So guys, Swiss yen, we're kind of very neutral right now. Price is in the middle of nowhere. We understand where our key important areas are, our higher time frame important areas, and what we're going to be doing is looking to get into some swing trading opportunities of these higher time frame regions. So we know where our important key selling area is, and we also know where our important key buying area is, which is where our eyes are going to be very much focused on. Why? Because higher time frame, we have this beautiful descending structure, we have nice momentum to the upside, and we are obviously expecting that continuation structure to continue to violate some resistance areas for us. Now this is our awesome bullish bias and bearish bias on our Aussie CAD. Guys, let's move on to the next pair that we're going to have a look at, and that is our Aussie dollar. So guys, on Aussie dollar, let's start off on the daily, just have a look at some structure. So from a daily perspective, what we will see is a price that was in a beautiful strong downtrend. So we've seen prices establishing lows, lower highs, new lower lows, lower highs, new lower lows. And what we've recently seen from a daily perspective, just looking at the most recent price action, is our AUDUSD showing us a nice beautiful sign of strength. So we're seeing prices violating our previous lower highs, obviously showing us that buyers are now within the market. All the sellers that came into the market from this area that were able to violate our previous support structures, obviously the buyers that came in from this area have been much more than the sellers that were involved before. Hence, our price has been able to violate that resistance area. So we've got a beautiful sign of strength from a daily perspective. What we're looking for after we see this sign of strength is for price to now resume a new trend in a different direction, whether it's a correction or a whole new trend on its own. We're expecting to see a nice higher low before we see prices giving us a new higher high above some resistance areas, maybe even coming to attack these resistances up there. So we have some beautiful directional bias here on our Aussie dollar. What we're going to do is just go down onto the H4 to observe that nature of price action and see what trading opportunities might present themselves over the course of next week for us here. So what we've done, guys, is we've observed this nice impulsive price action violating our resistance areas over here. And then what we've seen, or what we've tried to do, is just isolate our important resistance areas here from a 4-hourly perspective, identifying that yes, prices are in some sort of a downtrend over here, but because we want to look for buying opportunities, we need to use this trend line to manage our bias. Now, as long as prices are below this resistance trend line, we need to be waiting for those reversal structures or for those nice beautiful corrective structures that we can isolate to give us that beautiful entry. Only and when prices do break above this resistance area, then do we have some warrant to begin to start looking for our continuation structures. Why? Because we violated the current downtrend at important support areas, and now we are changing trend to the upside. Maybe we'll even have that nice beautiful sign of strength, and then we begin to look for those higher lows. So guys, we're trading the price action, waiting for prices to start aligning in our direction. Let prices come into our beautiful key areas for those beautiful probabilities, and obviously once prices give us the right reasons to jump into these positions, then we're in, guys. If we look at prices, I guess in terms of structure, some higher time frame structure, we do have the potential, guys, to complete a beautiful awkward looking inverse head and shoulders. So we have resistance areas up here, prices giving us this beautiful right shoulder, giving us a head. Obviously neckline's not 100% aligning, but we could see this right shoulder form and then that bullish momentum to come and complete where our inverse started. So we have some beautiful higher time frame structure that's also aligning with this bullish bias. All we need to wait for, guys, on AU is just some beautiful price action that gives us reason to jump into this buy. Now that we've had a look at our AU, let's go on to our next pair, guys, and that is some Swiss yen. So Swiss yen, guys, we'll start off on the daily. One thing that I have to say about Swiss yen off the bat before we even get into some analysis, guys, is that our bias at this point has changed on Swiss yen. We know that we've been looking for those bearish bias trades for so long, but just trading the price action, guys, I can't ignore what I see on the charts, and just for the current moment we're going to be bullish on this pair. So guys, looking at Swiss yen from a daily perspective, we still have the same kind of structure that we had. We're still inside of this expanding structure over here, so taking into account our important resistance areas, taking into account important support structures over here, we're still inside this nice expanding structure. We still have all of this nice bearish momentum over here from a daily perspective that is kind of coming off our beautiful third touch. So if we isolated a nice daily structure here, we'd notice that this is the third touch. We're seeing that nice bearish momentum, but what we have now, if we slapped on a nice support structure, or rather a support structure that we would have had if we kept this higher time frame structure over here, what we would then see, guys, is prices have corrected, or rather violated our support structure kind of correctively, because if we drop down on a H4, what we will see is prices breaking and closing below, prices breaking and closing back above, and we've seen another pushback below our support trend line. So we've seen some corrective price action. Now if we go down, let's also just delete this over here. Now if we go down onto a 4-hour, guys, and just observe the nature of price action, what's been going on here is that after we've seen this nice bearish run violating our beautiful support structures over there, establishing some support, establishing some resistance, what we've seen after we've seen those extreme support and extreme resistance is price creating structure within that support and within that resistance. So still price being very corrective within this range over here. So I'm gonna approach this just like what it is. It is a range. We have extreme support, we have extreme resistance, and I'm gonna be looking for buying probabilities from the low of our support, selling probabilities from the high of our support. So yes, indeed, as we're long-term bearish bias on this pair, we can't be looking for sells because we're close to an important support structure over here. So what we're going to be doing, guys, is we're just going to isolate some structure that will support our potential bullish bias. So let's just do this, accommodate for our important support structures over here. We can see that we do have some nice corrective price action coming down towards our support structures over there. Also, if we do the exact same thing for our resistance, doing that, we do see that we do have some sort of a down channel, some sort of a downtrend that is looking like a channel. So within this channel, guys, we do have 2 touches, so we could obviously expect prices to come down, deliver us that nice third touch of structure, and then give us that nice bullish momentum. So for the course of next week, guys, we're gonna be slightly bullish bias, paying attention to what do prices do when we come down to the low of this area. Do we give a nice reversal structure? If we do, guys, I'm gonna be focused on those buy biased trades, just because structure is warranting me to do that. We're correcting to the downside, we're in some sort of a range, so we treat it like a range. Also, prices even higher time frame have been moving sideways, so we need to be paying attention to the structures that are developing within our sideways moving market and adapting according to how structure is evolving. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put our long-term bearish bias on pause, wait for prices to get up to resistance areas, to come to the high of this range, and then give us an opportunity, guys, to enter into our higher time frame bearish bias. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing over the course of next week, guys. Bullish bias on Swiss yen for next week, hopefully gonna take us into some important resistance areas where we can actually continue and find trades that will support our bearish bias. So guys, that's Swiss yen. Let's look for those bullish bias setups. Let's jump into the last pair that we're gonna have a look at for this week, guys, and that's New Zealand dollar JPY. And with this pair, you guys are gonna see how we're also going to be hedging some JPY strength. Now looking at some New Zealand dollar JPY, let's also go up to that daily, just so that we can also observe some weekly time frame structure, if there is any important weekly time frame structure to observe. Not really, so we'll just stick to some daily price action. So guys, from a daily, what we can see here is prices coming in from the top, establishing some support, resistance, support, equal highs, and then a nice push down, violating some beautiful key support structures over there. So we know that this move is the origin of the violation of this support structure, and I guess even the violation of these new support structures nice and impulsively. Why? Because after we saw this resistance, we've only ever seen lower highs being forming, new support structures being violated. So we understand that this is an important key area of resistance, where when we had our previous bias and we saw this nice inverse head and shoulders over here, we were expecting prices to come and terminate at this area here. So we can see that current price action is close to this area, is close to that important resistance area over there, that we've seen a nice big bunch of sellers coming in, pushing down prices and being able to violate some levels of structure. So because we're at resistance, guys, we're going to be slightly bearish bias on New Zealand dollar JPY. So just because we're at resistance, guys, we're going to be bearish bias, and we're obviously going to need to wait for structure to give us an opportunity to trade this bearish bias. So looking for any bullish continuation trades, we're observing the structure, guys, on New Zealand dollar JPY from a 4-hour and as well as from a daily perspective, and we can see that these are our previous important support structures that were violated. Prices coming back, slowing down towards this area, breaking above impulsively and not coming back to retest. So we're expecting this area to be a nice retest area for any bullish continuation, but right now, since we're at that resistance area, we need to be focused on the most recent price action and obviously waiting to see if prices give us a trade in the direction of our bias. Now what we can see, guys, is prices giving us a nice set of equal highs at our resistance areas. What this means to us and what this is telling me, guys, is that I should be expecting prices to be attracted to this area, to want to violate this area after we break back below our important resistance structures. That is when, guys, my eyes will be focused on waiting to see prices retesting our important key resistance areas where we've seen prices respecting in the past, coming back, respecting again, violating nice and impulsively, breaking back below. And only when we see prices breaking back below our structure, guys, do we then look for our respect of this level of structure, and then obviously that continuation to the downside that is going to give us an opportunity to ride this wave all the way before we see any bullish continuation and more continuation, I guess, to the upside from New Zealand dollar JPY. So now that we're at our resistance areas, guys, we're going to be bearish bias, looking for prices to push to the downside to give us this nice retest of our important key support areas before we see that continuation of some bullish strength on New Zealand dollar JPY. So what we're doing is we're hedging some JPY strength. Our Swiss yen position, guys, remember, we're looking for that bullish bias setup. So if we see that JPY weakness and all of these JPY code pairs moving to the upside over the course of next week, we'll be looking for that buy on Swiss yen. On the other hand, if we see some JPY strength and all of these JPY code pairs making that move to the downside, guys, we're at resistance here on New Zealand dollar JPY. And even if we see prices giving us a different form of a setup by breaking below these support structures over here, giving us a sign of weakness, giving us this new sign of weakness. Once we see a sign of weakness at our resistance areas, what our eyes are focused on is for seeing that lower high to form. And once we see this lower high below our previous resistance areas, we're looking for that bearish bias opportunity to trade our bearish setups. So this is our bias on New Zealand dollar JPY, guys, hedging that JPY strength as well. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's analysis session. We have concluded and we have reached the end. Guys, if you have received the value that was intended for you guys, definitely do drop a like on this video. I will appreciate it, guys. If it's your first time on the channel, definitely do subscribe because you will miss our future updates on videos that have just as much value as this one. So definitely don't forget, guys, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the future value. Otherwise, thanks so much, guys, for watching until the end of this video. This is Tremaine, your FX Chasers mentor. We'll see you guys in the future videos, guys. Have a pipful week. Have a beautiful, profitable week, guys. Cheers.